Paudvijana
Nitai Gaura Chandra.
Shab Avatar Shar Shiromani Kevala Ananda Kanda
Shab Avatar
Sarasiromani
Kevala
Bhaj Bhaj Bhai Chaitanya Nitai Sudridha Vishvasa Kori
Bhaj Bhaj Bhai
Chaitanya Nitai Sudridha Vishvasa Kori Vishaya Charya Tera se Majiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari Dekha ore bhai Tribhuvane nai Emon doyalo data
Dekha Bhuvane nai
Pashu Paki Jure Pashana Vidare Shuni Jar Gunagata
Pasupati Jure
Sangsara Machiya Rohili Podia Se Pode Nohilo Asha
Samsara
Se Pode Nohilo Asha Apan Koroma Bunjaye Shamana Kohoye Lochana Dasa
Apana Kunjiya
Parama Koruna Pahudvijan Nitai Gaura Chandra
Parama
Parama Koruna Pahudvijan Nitai Gaura Chandra Parama Karuna Shab Avatar Shar Shiromani Kevala Ananda Kanda Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajak Acharya Ashtotara Sata Shishimara's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Jamuna Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Hari Hari Bol.
Hare
Nama Om
Bol.
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Hari Bol.
Oh, Krishna.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Shri
Jai Jai
Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya
Jai
Advaita
Advaita
Chandra Jaya Govinda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda
Jai
Jaya
Jai
Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Govinda.
Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Govinda.
We're reading in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila chapter 20. We're at the last part of the purport in verse number 135. But just before that, we chanted the last line today of the Padma Karuna prayer. So I just wanted to go over the translation of that. So it goes, Sangsara Majia, Sangsar Majia. Sansar is, as you know, it's the repeated birth and death. Sangsara Majia. I'm absorbed in birth and death. Rohili Podia and Se Pode no Hilo Ash. I don't have any attraction for those feet of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. Se Pode no Hilo Ash. Apana Korama Bunjaya Shamana. I'm being punished by Yamaraj. I'm being punished because I have no attraction for Krishna's, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda's lotus feet. Apana Se Kohoye Lochana Das. So Lochana Das is Lochan Das Thakur is the author of that prayer. Last time. Okay. So let's, Mother Kavita, can you chant that verse once again? Hello?
Yeah. পূর্ব দিকে তাতে মাটি অল্প খুদিতে ধনের ঝাড়ি পরিবেক তোমার হাতেতে.
However, if you dig up a small quantity of dirt on the eastern side, your hands will immediately touch the pot of treasure. Who knows what we're talking about here? Who can summarize? Who would like to summarize?
The astrologer told the Sarvagya, told that your father has left a big treasury, but you have to go and get it, and he's giving the self-instruction which way to go and where to get it and what will happen if it digs from which side.
Very good, yeah. And what is that treasure? It's an allegory, right?
Yes.
So what is the treasure?
The treasure is devotional service,
No,
love of God.
that's right. Krishna Prema is the treasure. The method of getting it is devotional service. And realizing that you have that treasure is called sambandha. So sambandha is understanding the relationship with Lord Krishna as being eternal servant. Abhideya is the process to find that treasure, and prayojana, the goal, is Krishna prema. Okay, so then we were just at this last part. Sometimes the living entity is misled into trying to merge into spiritual existence, thinking himself as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that when he comes to the spiritual platform, he will be disturbed and will again return to the material platform. According to the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 2nd chapter, 32nd verse, Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasad bhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruya krichchena param padam tata patantyado nadriti yushvarangaya. Such people may become sannyasis, but unless they take shelter. Somebody has to, yeah. Okay, thank you. But unless they take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, they will return to the material platform to perform philanthropic activities. In this way, one's spiritual life is lost. This is to be understood as being devoured by the black snake. So in Bhagavad Gita, also, Lord Krishna says, Klesho dikataras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam. So those who are attached to are trying to follow the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, progress for them is very difficult. Prabhupada sometimes gave the example of people who try to go to the moon planet, or the moon, but because they can't find any shelter there, they have to come back. Similarly, people who go to try to enter the Brahma Jyoti, but because there's no shelter or engagement there, they come back to the material world to try to enjoy in that way. So there were three sides of the area that were not recommended by Lord Chaitanya to dig. One was the side of karma kanda. The other side was of jnana kanda, speculative knowledge, impersonal, and then the third side was the impersonal yoga. Those three sides were dangerous. So here we have, but if we dig on the eastern side, then the treasure of love of God can be attained through bhakti yoga. So this is an example given by Lord Chaitanya. Text 136.
ওইছে শাস্ত্র কহে কর্ম জ্ঞান যোগ তজি ভক্তে কৃষ্ণ বশ হয় ভক্তে তারে ভজি.
Thank you. Revealed scriptures conclude that one should give up fruitive activity, speculative knowledge, and the mystic yoga system, and instead take to devotional service by which Krishna can be fully satisfied. So this is very important. This is the conclusion of the example Lord Chaitanya is giving, to give up fruitive activity, speculative knowledge, and mystic yoga, but instead take to devotional service. In Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna explains the same thing. In the 2nd chapter, he said to Arjun, Durena hyavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya. He says that stay away, get far away from avaram karma. Avaram karma means nasty or abominable karma. So Krishna is saying that this fruit of activity or karma is nasty. So it's not that everything is okay. In the 70s or the late 60s, there was a book uh, published called "I'm Okay, You're Okay," and that's the attitude of many spiritualist types that say, well, everything you do is okay, whatever you do is okay, but that's not the view of Krishna. Krishna's saying here in Bhagavad Gita, and also in this part of the teachings to Sanatana Goswami, that karma, fruit of activity, is bad. It's not going to help you. Narottam Das Thakur said, karma kanda, jnana kanda, kevala vishera bandha. That both karma and gyan are sources of bondage to the material world, to death. So even though they might seem very nice, methods of enjoyment, ultimately they lead to a dead end, which is remaining in the clutches of the material world, lifetime after lifetime. So instead of doing activities for satisfying of one's own body, for one's family, one's nation, Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita and here in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya is encouraging us to do devotional service, which means doing things for the pleasure of Krishna instead of for the pleasure of ourselves, our family, our country, and society, etc. Oh, this is next verse is a Sanskrit. Na sadhyati mam yogo, na sankyam dharma uddhava, na svadhyayastapastyago, yata bhaktir mamonjita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Uddhava, neither through Ashtanga Yoga, the mystic yoga system to control the senses, nor through impersonal monism, or an analytical study of the absolute truth, nor through study of the Vedas, nor through practice of austerities, nor through charity, nor through acceptance of sannyas, can one satisfy me as much as one can by developing unalloyed devotional service unto me. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 14th chapter, 20th verse. The explanation for this verse is given in Adi Lila, 17th chapter, 72nd verse. Shall we read that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I thought so. I thought you'd say yes. So this is in the 11th canto. There's usually we hear of the Bhagavad Gita, but there's also in the 11th canto Krishna's instructions to Uddhava, one of his associates in Dwarka, is called Uddhava Gita. This is part of the Uddhava Gita. So the purport here is that Karamis, Gyanis, Yogis, Tapasvis, and students of Vedic literature who do not have Krishna consciousness simply beat around the bush. I never heard Srila Prabhupada use that expression before, but it's nicely, they beat around the bush and do not get any final profit because they have no clear knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor do they have faith in approaching him by discharging devotional service, although everywhere such service is repeatedly emphasized as it is in this verse. From Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita also declares, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyas chasmi tattvata. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service. Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 55th verse. If one wants to understand the Supreme Personality factually, he must take to the path of devotional service and not waste time in profitless philosophical speculation, fruitive activity, mystic yoga practice, or severe austerities and penance. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, 1-5, 12th chapter, 5th verse, the Lord confirms, klesha dikatarastesham avakta sakta chetasam. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the supreme, advancement is very troublesome. People who are attached to the impersonal feature of the Lord are obliged to take great trouble, yet nevertheless they cannot understand the absolute truth. As explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. Unless one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original source of both Brahman and Paramatma, one is still in darkness about the absolute truth. Yeah, good. Questions, comments? Yes? No? Okay.
So the difficulty is if they accept the impersonal feature, there is nothing to sustain them. If they merge with this, if
Yes.
they merge with the Brahma Jyoti, there's nothing to do, and the soul needs an activity. And
Yes, the soul, correct. The soul by nature is active, and since they have either they don't have any knowledge of, or they're not interested in action in Krishna consciousness, the only other action to take is that involving in the material world. So because that dormant need to act, or the dormant nature of the soul being active, it has to come back to the material world to act. So that's why, that's another reason why Krishna says that karma is avaram. It means it's abominable, because you get stuck in the cycle of doing it again and again. It's like a rut that doesn't. It's hard to get out of the rut. So even if you go for a long, if you get out, it seems like you get out if you go to the Brahma Jyoti, but because there's no other, you have no other action to do, you come back. Yes. Okay. Next verse. Oh, I think this is Sanskrit too. No. Bhaktyaham ekaya grahya shradayatma priyasatam bhakti punati mam nishta svapakan api sambhavat. Being very dear to the devotees and sadhus, I am attained through unflinching faith and devotional service. This bhakti yoga system, which gradually increases attachment for me, purifies even a human being born among dog eaters. That is to say, everyone can be elevated to the spiritual platform by the process of bhakti yoga. Purport. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-21. So it continues Uddhava's, the Lord Krishna's teachings to Uddhava. So this is very strong. This is very strong language. Nothing works as good as, nothing works but bhakti yoga. And what is bhakti yoga? What is bhakti yoga? Who can say?
Devotional service.
Yeah, and what is devotional service?
Developing a loving relationship.
Chanting.
Yes,
Is
it
it
begins with, as you're doing, hearing and chanting about Krishna, Shravanam Kirtanam, and then there's Smaranam, remembering, Bandanam, offering respects, obeisances, Archanam, Smaranam, all these things. The 9 processes of devotional service, which begins with hearing and chanting. And a very important thing, it says that this bhakti yoga process gradually increases, by that gradually we increase our attachment for Krishna by regularly hearing and chanting and engaging in devotional service to him. Kapila Muni also said that Satam prasangam mamavirya samvido bhavantirit karuna rasayana kata. That if you pour the nectar of hearing about Krishna into your ear, then the path of repeated birth and death immediately becomes stopped, and Shraddha Ratir Bhakti Anukramishati, and faith, attachment, and love take place one thing after another. This is very positive, very positive thing.
Can you please read what was in the purport? Because my edition of the Chaitanya Charitamrita has no purport for that verse.
Yeah. It just says this verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam. That's all. That's all that's in the purport here.
Okay.
Nothing else. In my version also. Text 139.
অতএব ভক্তি কৃষ্ণ প্রাপ্তের উপায় অভিধেয় বলি তারে সর্বশাস্ত্রে গায়.
The conclusion is that devotional service is the only means to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This system is therefore called Abhidheya. This is the verdict of all revealed scriptures. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvata tato mam tattvato gyatva vishate tad anantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord, by such devotion, he can enter the kingdom of God. Vishate tad anantaram. The aim of life is to get rid of material conditioning and enter into spiritual existence. So what is material conditioning? Could you give some examples of material conditioning?
I am this body. Everything
Yeah, thinking
belongs
with
to
his
me.
body. Good. What else?
My family, my country, my wealth.
My country, 'tis of thee. Yeah, sure. And so what's the next thing? If we think with the body, we think important things are to get pleasure for our bodies or for other bodies that we're associated with. Material conditioning. And then if we don't get what we want, we become angry. It's another material. And then if somebody else has the thing that we're thinking we want, that we call that jealousy or envy. All these things are different aspects of material conditioning. Yeah. So the aim is to get rid of the material conditioning and enter into spiritual existence. Although the Shastras prescribe different methods for different men, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says that one ultimately must accept the path of devotional service as the assured path of spiritual advancement. Devotional service to the Lord is the only process actually confirmed by the Lord. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. One must become a devotee if one wants to return home back to Godhead and become eternally blissful. So some people will question, well, then why in the Vedas there are all these different things recommended? Sometimes it will say worship Kali, or sometimes it will seem to, like in the Upanishads, it might seem to recommend following austerities and following an impersonal path. So what do we say?
There's always some people who is not ready to take the devotional service.
That's right. So all these things are mixed in because some people need to be elevated much more slowly. So better to get elevated slowly than not at all. But for once one is really serious about becoming spiritually conscious and a servant of the Lord, then you have to take the devotional service. That's why after Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedic scriptures, he was feeling unhappy. And Narad Muni told him, the reason you're unhappy is because you've got all these things mixed together. It's not that there was no devotional service in all the Vedas. There was Bhagavad Gita was there in the Mahabharata, but because they're mixed together with other things, it's hard for people to understand the ultimate purpose was really to develop Krishna consciousness and love of God. So then Narada told Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva, that you have to compile literature that exclusively describes that. Just like, give an example, I was given a book on Vaishnava etiquette a couple of days ago, and I read through the book, and there were quotes from Srila Prabhupada, and there were other things that I have no idea where they came from, and I didn't agree with them. So then, when you have all those things, things that you can rely on and things that you can't rely on mixed together, it's very confusing what the real thing is. So similarly, that's the Vedic literature can become confusing, and mostly it is confusing for people unless they understand the goal from a bona fide spiritual master. This is important. Next verse, 140.
ধন পাইলে জৈছে সুখ ভোগ ফল পায়, সুখ ভোগ হইতে দুঃখ আপনি পলায়।
When one actually becomes rich, he naturally enjoys all kinds of happiness. When one is actually in a happy mood, all distressful conditions go away by themselves. No extraneous endeavor is needed. Text 141.
দৈছে ভক্তি ফলে কৃষ্ণ প্রেম উপজয়, প্রেমে কৃষ্ণ বোধ হইলে ভব নাশ পায়।
Similarly, as a result of bhakti, one's dormant love for Krishna awakens. When one is so situated that he can taste the association of Lord Krishna, material existence, the repetition of birth and death, comes to an end. Text 142.
দারিদ্র নাশ ভবক্ষয় প্রেমের ফল নয়, প্রেম সুখ ভোগ মুখ্য প্রয়োজন হয়।
The goal of love of Godhead is not to become materially rich or free from material bondage. The real goal is to be situated in devotional service to the Lord and to enjoy transcendental bliss. Purport. The results of devotional service are certainly not material benefits or liberation from material bondage. The goal of devotional service is to be eternally situated in the loving service of the Lord and to enjoy spiritual bliss from that service. One is said to be in a poverty-stricken condition when one forgets the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one has to end such a life of poverty in order to automatically end the miserable conditions of material existence. One is automatically liberated from material enjoyment when one tastes the service of Krishna. One does not have to endeavor separately for opulence. Opulence automatically comes to the pure devotee, even though he does not desire material happiness. So this is very interesting. Comments or questions about this? I have a question for you, if you're ready. Okay, so it says here, opulence automatically comes to the pure devotee. Well, we know that when Srila Prabhupada first came to the United States, he only had like 40 rupees. So what about that?
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
What's
true.
that?
yeah. And then after Srila Prabhupada started preaching, he got more than 108 temple before he left the body.
Yes.
So opulence naturally comes. And
So you're saying that it may not come may not be there immediately, but when it's needed for Krishna's service, Krishna gave him everything. Even though in the beginning he didn't have much opulence, but when it was used for Krishna's when he needed it for Krishna's service, yeah, okay, all right, yeah. So then also sometimes people say, well, we have this magazine called Back to Godhead. So some people question that, will say, well, isn't going back to Godhead a kind of one of the 5 kinds of liberation that devotees, aren't aspiring for? What do you say to that?
Going back to Godhead is not the same as enjoying one of the facilities. Going there to serve Krishna.
Okay, so yeah, but nobody can go back to the spiritual world if they want to enjoy, right? They want to enjoy. If there's even a pinch of material enjoyment, desire for material enjoyment, nobody can go back into it. So, I mean, another way of saying it is that to go back to Godhead, really going back to Godhead means, as said here in this purport, to be engaged fully in the devotional service of the Lord. And then that is being back to Godhead. Whether you're in the material world, the spiritual world, anywhere, but being engaged fully in the service of the Lord is being back to Godhead.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
If you said without having a pinch of material enjoyment.
Yeah.
We do devotional service and we do as much as we can based on our personal capacity. And even though sometimes you don't have the desire for material enjoyment, things come in, you have kids and whatnot, and you do find yourself enjoying, and you catch yourself and you're like, well, this was not really spiritual. How do you, what do you have to say about that?
What makes it not spiritual?
No, I mean, you're playing in the, you're playing with the kids, a board game. You're playing with the, or watching a movie. It's that's not spiritual, but when you have kids, you have to do certain things. So it's definitely,
So the expertise of Krishna consciousness, one can take even play and Krishnaize it or spiritualize it, if that's a good way to do things. That's one way of looking at it. How can you, even if you're gonna look at a movie, which is not, I know Prabhupada, I was listening to Srila Prabhupada said that when he was a young man, someone said, I'll give you $1,000 or 1,000 rupees if you come and watch this movie with me. He said, no, I'm not going to do it. No, he refused it. He had no taste for that. But even if you watch a movie, where is Krishna? How is this related to Krishna consciousness? That would be the important thing to do. And we're in this material world, and we have there are still, because we're not fully pure, we have other material attachments and interests, but by regularly engaging in Krishna consciousness, those interests and attachments become reduced over time. So that's a good thing. We want to reduce our attachment as much as possible. How? By regularly hearing and chanting about Krishna, attending, chanting 16 rounds and taking prasadam and these kinds of things.
So
Okay.
Another portion of the question is, you don't have the desire. So you said, if you have a desire, pinch of material attachment. Like, so you don't have the desire for it, but you're doing it. Does that make any, is that any consolation?
Well, I mean, it depends on what it is.
Yeah, obviously, but I mean, as I said, you know, I don't really have the desire for certain things, but I do
Yeah.
it
So
because
so kids play. So you don't want to play.
or
So
I don't
yeah,
want to watch a kid's movie that they want me to watch. But
you know, it depends on the movies. There are all kinds of movies. So, you know, some movies are just complete nonsense. I remember when Srila Prabhupada first went to, he left the 26 Second Avenue. No, I'm sorry, that he was living at on the Bowery on the Bowery with a guy named Paul. And then Paul was taking LSD, so he had to leave immediately. He went to Mukunda Swami's apartment. Well, Mukunda was at that time. He wasn't initiated. Mike. He went to his apartment and he knocked on the door. It was like in the morning, and on the TV were cartoons. And you remember somebody's chuckling. Yeah. So probably he said, "This is nonsense. This is nonsense." So, you know, some stuff is just nonsense. What can you say? But well, how much a kid can play, what kind of play, you know, we try to get kids in this direction, to try to get kids in the direction to have some play involving Krishna if you can. Is there some? Yeah. You don't have to watch it.
to me not having the desire, but I'm doing it sometimes. Does that make sense?
Well, you can say on one side you can do it, and then by doing it you might develop the desire, because by involving oneself in that material activity, you know, you get association is there. So anyway, just be very, one has to be really careful. One has to be really careful about stuff. You know, it's not that Srila Prabhupada never watched a movie. He did. He watched, you know, Satsvarup Maharaj said, Charlie Chaplin, Mukunda Swami said it was Max Lerner, but there was a movie about a guy who was at a ball, and he had this coat and tails, and he sat down on a bench, and some naughty kids had put glue on the bench, and so when he got up to dance, the backside of his tails were torn off, and he was exposed from the back. So then he looked around, he didn't know what to do, looked in the mirror, he thought, oh, this is, so he started to dance very exuberantly. And so everybody looked around, and they thought this is crazy, but then they thought, wow, this is something wonderful. And so all of them ripped up the backside of their pants and started to dance. And Prabhupada gave that as the example for devotees when they go to London, about how to engage in, you know, propagate Krishna consciousness by incredible enthusiasm. So he got some Krishna conscious message out of that, you know. We try to see everything in relation to Krishna, and how is that? What is the relationship with Krishna? I mean, we'd like to make that connection, because otherwise it's just wasting our time.
I have a question about that though, because yesterday we were reading in the Bhagavatam class about when one is equally fixed, and I have to find the verse because I have my laptop on, so I can't switch. But when one is equally balanced in religion, economic development, and material activities. So it specifically was saying, let me see if I can find it.
I'll try and pull it up.
Yeah, it was. Oh, here it is. When it's 10:5:28. When one's friends and relatives are properly situated, one's religion, economic development, and sense gratification, as described in Vedic literatures, are beneficial. Otherwise, if one's friends and relatives are not in distress, these three cannot offer any happiness. So it's talking about specifically, like we had this conversation yesterday in class about material activities, and that it's important to have a balance of material activities and spiritual activities, and like maintaining our bodies and exercise, and maintaining our
Recreation.
children, and having playtime with the kids, because they're kids and they need to play, and that's just part of their outlet in life, and they're learning, and you plant the seeds of Krishna consciousness. So I'm hearing I hear sometimes conflicting things in our movement that I find troubling, because I feel like sometimes it can lead to a fanatical mindset, and I get worried about that. So I'm kind of just putting it out there as like, I hear like very different sides of the coin. It's like one side is like, absolutely no material activities, you have to focus your mind. And then the other side is like, well, no, a little bit's okay, just be balanced about it. So I'm curious what your perspective is.
Okay, well, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects or a lot of different areas you can talk about. If you want to talk about, we'll talk about kids first, because I got a little experience with that. I mean, Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that kids should play. You can't stop kids from playing. I think I mentioned in this class before, there was a Gurukul headmaster who was following Freud, who thought that play, because Freud's idea was play is sublimated sex desire. Early, the kids, a boy will have something called the Oedipus complex, and then they sublimate that, and that's sublimated into play. So he stopped the kids, the Gurukul kids, from playing because that was sublimated sex desire. Well, that's not what Srila Prabhupada said. We're not the followers of Freud. Srila Prabhupada emphasized that kids should play, but at the same time, to involve if the kids can play in relationship with Krishna, that's very good. How do you do that? Well, you got football, baseball, all these kinds of things. I was talking about this with Adi Shesha. So he says, well, he prays to Krishna to get a hit when he goes to the bat. I'm not advocating that. I'm not advocating that kind of thing, but some way to involve remembrance of Krishna at the time in the play. That's what Lord Chaitanya did in his youth. That's what Lord Nityananda did in his youth. That's what the cowherd boys were doing in their youth. How are you going to do that? Well, I know when we started a summer camp in there was a temple in the Catskill Mountains called Lake Huntington, and so we just had people, anytime they had to they were doing a game, to be effective, they had to chant Hare Krishna for anything. I know if you want to get somebody out, you say Hare Krishna. In Mayapur, in India, they have this game called Kapadi. Is it Kapadi?
Kabaddi.
Yeah, Kapadi. So they say, they run and they have to leave their breath. They on one side they keep saying Kapadi, 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 Kapadi. So I know in Mayapur the kids were playing it, instead of Kapadi, what did they say?
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So somehow involve Krishna. That's the recommendation. That'll be a recommendation. Now, sometimes I visit my family, so at least I make sure that all the prasadam of the food is cooked and offered to Krishna before they take it. Yes, somehow involving Krishna. Exactly how that is, it depends on the circumstances. Depends on it. So I gave the example of kids play. Yeah, better kids play with if there can be some Krishna involvement in the play. That's nice. People get involved with sports and things, and they become mad. They kill people about that. I don't know if that has any use at all. What do you think?
Also, I want, if you could explain that verse.
Which verse? The one she just quoted from?
Right.
Well, I'd have to think about it a little bit. No.
And we did,
Srila
we had a nice, Sue Devi, Prabhu gave a really nice class on it yesterday, and I think it
Okay.
was, but the verse itself was, if you wanted to pull that up and maybe send us your thoughts on it, that would be great. You can
Okay.
email or whatever, but.
I went to to Vrindavan in 1981, and there was a Gurukul kid there who, in response to what you were saying, his name was Raghunath. Let's see, we have a Raghunath here. He's originally one of the Gurukul kids, and he said that when Srila Prabhupada organized the Gurukul there in Vrindavan, it was fun. The kids had fun. Some time later, it became, as you say, a little bit, more fanatical. He said that they used to do every day. They would go to the Yamuna in the morning, and they would do a kirtan on the way to Yamuna. Then they would bathe, and then swim, and then wrestle, and then come. So they had fun even though it was they were kids. Okay, so I'll look at it. Sure. You didn't record what Sue Devi said. I don't want to contradict what she said. Do they record these things in Zoom?
Sometimes, but Sue Devi, I don't know if you wanted to just share what your class was about. I don't know. Maybe Sue Devi, you're on.
I will let Vishnugada Prabhu look at it first.
Oh, okay.
I think yesterday we were just talking about having a balance. And I think all of us are trying our best. And first of all, I think we should not get discouraged. It is sometimes a little bit difficult, especially when the kids are participating with groups that are not thinking like you are thinking, and so the kids will have to figure out how to balance. They do practice a lot of Krishna consciousness at home, but they also have to learn how to navigate with people who don't. And at their age, they are still trying to figure out how to do it. So when you are helping them learn to be Krishna conscious outside, I think that is also devotional service. Or at least that's how I am. Sometimes I wonder if I'm rationalizing everything, but you're constantly thinking about it. You're trying to figure out how to balance. It's not always easy. Sometimes it is easier for us because we are very sure which path we want to lead, but the kids are still not there. And when you are helping them, then that is also service to service to Krishna. That is also devotional service.
Yeah, that's called teaching, preaching. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
When you were saying about Adisesha's comment about baseball, and then how you were teaching in camp, can you just explain that again? I don't know. He said he prays to Krishna that he should
get a hit.
And you were saying that you were teaching.
I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm sorry. I should have clarified that. We can one way we approach God is God give us our daily bread. So that's kind of the similar way. God give me a hit. God give me a hit.
Right, right.
That's really trying to make God our order supplier. That's not devotional service.
Yes.
It's better. It's better than just being an atheist or not thinking of God at all. But it's not really bhakti, or it's very rudimentary bhakti. So how are you going to get people involved in pure devotional service when they're on a football team or a swimming team, that will have to, you have to think about that. For somebody who's doing exercise, the purpose of doing exercise is to keep your body fit. So but if you keep your body fit in order to just engage in material activities, that's not of any value at all. But you keep your body fit so you can engage in devotional service. Okay, that we can talk about that. That's all right.
Prabhu, have you heard that the Prabhupada talking about him playing with his sister flying kite and
Yes.
saying Krishna?
Yeah, of course, that was as a kid, right? And it was,
Yes.
he also played soccer, but he was the goalie. But of course, all that was before he was initiated by a spiritual master. And one of the things, if you see on that list of things for initiated people, and everybody's not initiated, I know that, but initiated people, it doesn't say do not engage in frivolous sports. It says there, if you notice, one of the things.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about kids.
What's that?
I was just saying about kids, kids were playing.
Yeah.
Not
there's no question that Srila Prabhupada didn't want kids. He did want kids to play, yes. And he did want, if he could arrange it for the kids to play. I mean, there's lots of instructions about this that he gave about Gurukul, and there's a little bit difference of opinion. There was Jagadish was the headmaster, and there was also a devotee in France named Jyotirmai. I don't know if you've ever heard of Jyotirmai, but she was the head of the Gurukul in France. Lots of instructions that Prabhupada gave about, raising kids and kids, and very clear that he wanted kids to play. He didn't want to stop kids from playing, but he wanted them to have, if it involved Krishna. When Parikshit Maharaj was born, there's a description in Srimad Bhagavatam, and he had little deities that he was Krishna Kridan Nakai Kridan, Krishna Kridan Balakan. Even from his childhood, he was doing some deity worship. Now, the deity worship wasn't like, he wasn't going on the altar in the big temple, but he had play deities. So they were playing deities at that time. So there's stuff like that. We have a picnic, and we go on raft. Didn't we go on some kind of raft? Mm-hmm. Was that Krishna consciousness, or was that Maya?
I did not go.
Huh?
I did not go.
Well, because of that, you avoided because it was Maya, right? Anyway, I mean, so you go on the raft, and then you can chant Hare Krishna and talk about Krishna there, at least some of the ways. Yeah, and it's not that Prabhupada never talked about anything else, but he never talked. It's not that he never talked about anything else, but he would usually bring it. He would always bring it back to Krishna somehow, and that's quite developed.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
So the one small and big. The big question is, back in India, there used to be so many yajnas and shlokas, everything for my daughter should get married, or I should get wealth, pray to Aishwarya Lakshmi. Most of these have an objective in mind, which are all materialistically related. Are they all, why do they have it if they're so against what is being said in the Gita? That's a big question. The other one is, between the two, Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman, I always feel more comfortable with Nirguna Brahman. Is one better than the other since they are equal manifestations of the same Brahman, or what's your opinion? Thank you.
Okay, you had two questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first question is, there's a lot of yagyas in the Vedas that are recommended and that are pretty much materialistic, marriages and all these kinds of things. Krishna said, on one hand, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtrigunya Bhavajana. Most of the Vedic literature is dealing with the three modes of material nature, and he recommends to Arjun, reject those modes of material nature and just be situated in Krishna consciousness. So, the Vedas, a lot of the Vedas are discussing, material processes that will gradually elevate someone by following specific rules and regulations according to Varnashram. In this Kali Yuga, to reach the goal of life, you won't be able to get it by following gradually those rules and regulations. So whatever you do, whatever yagis you do, it should be started with and finished with chanting the holy names of Krishna. Whatever play you're going to do, chant Hare Krishna. I think Prahlad Maharaj did that. He chanted Hare Krishna. Then the next thing you said was about the Sagun Brahma and Nirgun Brahma. Both are part of our aspects of Krishna, but of the two, there's actually another one. The third one is the Paramatma. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Shani Vishto. I'm within everybody's heart as super soul. Mata Smriti or Jnanam Apohanam Cha. And from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So they're all three are aspects of the absolute truth, but the supreme personality of Godhead, the Sagun, that gun is not material gun, it's spiritual gun, spiritual quality. That's the last word in understanding the absolute truth. So the example is given, like if you're waiting for a train, you might have in India, they have, the train, you're waiting on the train tracks, and from a distance, when you first see the train coming, it looks like a light with no form, just a light. Then when it comes closer, there's light and a form. And then when it arrives in the station, the train, you see the light, the form, and then there are activities going on with all these kinds of people in the train. So that's compared to the three aspects of understanding the absolute truth. The impersonal Brahman, light, localized Paramatma, there's some form there, form of the Lord. And then activities engaged in relationship with the Lord, the devotional service, offering obeisances to, engaging in chanting the names of God, etc., etc.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So I begin my day with Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanam, and then I go to bed saying the same thing, hoping that whatever I have done wrong, I did it out of ignorance or something.
That's good.
Yeah. We do so many things out of ignorance, but then Krishna, please lead us on the right path. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's we're really over time here now. There's other questions. Somebody's going to send me that verse, and I'll look at it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to everybody.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Mhm.